welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah, and today we are throwing it back to a video that I haven't done in a while, and I've been meaning to. Just life gets in the way, you know? So a couple of years ago, I did a video called Did I Miss Out?, where I reread a book that was popular when I was in middle school, high school, and talked about if I thought that I would have enjoyed it as a preteen teenager if I missed out by not reading that book. And today we are going to continue that series that is The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. Today we're talking about book 2, The Magician. So I do, of course, have a full summary review of book 1, The Alchemyst, that I will link here. So much going on in these books. I feel like this would be a forever long video if I really went through everything that happened in book 1, and of course I'll summarize all of the important parts to get us started for book 2, but if you want a full summary, my review, if I think that I missed out by not reading it, definitely check out that video. But without further ado, let's dive into this. So as usual, we'll start with a little bit of a summary, kind of explain all of the key details. Stick around for the end of the video where I will tell you, because it could change. I mean, I thought I missed out by not reading the first book, but you know, sometimes when you continue reading a series, it might not be for you. So stick around to see if I do think I continued to miss out by not finishing the rest of this series. Before we dive into the plot of book 1, book 2, any of that stuff, I do just kind of want to quickly explain where I came up with this idea. And if I'm being honest, a lot of this is just to shame my former self for the decisions that she made in the past. But whenever I was a preteen teen, I somehow thought that I had read all of the good fantasy that was out there and that there was nothing else of quality that existed. And so I was aware of a lot of books. I was aware of this series, but in my head I thought, well, there's no way that that could be good because I haven't read it. So in my delusional world, at which point I was also just very into like classical reading, so it was a lot of Dickens, a lot of Jane Austen, those sort of things. So I just thought that if I hadn't read it at this point, it must not be good and not worth reading. So that led to me missing out on quite a bit, in my opinion, or possibly missing out, as we'll find out. So that's what made me pick up this series again. So before we dive in, if you have any recommendations for me of I'm looking for like middle grade YA books that you read as a kid that you think I would enjoy or you would like to see my reaction to, let me know in the comments. I have a long list of stuff that I want to get to, and of course we are getting into fall, so I do want to prioritize some more spooky reads for the fall season, but I have a long list of books that I'd love to talk through with you. So if you have any recommendations of things I can add to the list, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to check those out and see if I would enjoy them as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the plot of this story. The way I would describe this, it's basically fan service for the nerds. So the 2 books that I've read so far, and I believe there's 6 total. I did buy the complete series when I started this, so I have a total of 6 books. I don't know if there were any more that were added, if there were any like novellas or anything like that along the line, but this is basically a culmination of nerddom in that we have this cast of characters from Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic lore, just pretty much any sort of myth, legend of the past is up for grabs as a character in this book. And there are, of course, some real people who have made it in here as well. The author, Michael Scott, which also just throws me for a loop that these are written by Michael Scott.
Here's a chapter called Gum with one sentence. Everybody likes the guy who offers them a stick of gum.
That's true.
He just kind of creates this cast of all of these crazy characters that you could think of. The Witch of Endor plays a major part, who is from the Bible. So it's just really any sort of myth, legend, tale, historical person of note, they're up for grabs for a character in this story. And as someone who's super nerdy, I do really appreciate that. I do have to say, one of the things that I love about this story is as the action is building and things are happening, it becomes apparent that the core group can't figure it out on their own. They're going to need to bring in somebody else. Then it's an element of, okay, who's going to be this next legendary character that joins the cast? So that has been really exciting as a reader of the first 2 books so far. Diving into the plot, our main characters are Josh and Sophie Newman. They are 15-year-old twins who at the start of the series were spending the summer in San Francisco while their parents, who were like archaeologists, were off on a dig site somewhere else. And so over the summer, Josh was working in the bookstore owned by Nicholas Flamel, and Sophie was working in the coffee shop owned by Perry, who is his wife, and they were in the shop when this, shall we call him, evil magician, Dr. John Dee, kind of attacked, that exposed them to this magical world where there are these immortal beings. There are these elders who are older than the human race, who once reigned and have kind of stuck to their own shadow realms in the past, but could potentially rule over humankind again. There are kind of 2 sides to this conflict, where some people want the Dark Elders to come back, those who would kind of enslave the humans and use them as food more than just letting them live, and the elders who don't want that to happen, who are just kind of okay with the way things are. All of this is kind of tied into this Book of Abraham, which is this ancient codex that has these spells that would allow the Dark Elders to return, amongst other things, and this prophecy of twins who are supposed to have a solid silver aura and a solid gold aura, and together they can kind of make or break either side of the conflict. And so Nicholas Flamel believes Josh and Sophie are those twins of legend. As I'm sure you can imagine, all sorts of adventures happen, and they are seeking out somebody who can awaken the twins' power, because as of now they have no magical abilities. That can change if their power is awakened. So Sophie's magic is awakened in the first book by Hecate, or Hecate, different pronunciations, and at the end the world tree that she lives in her own like shadow realm is destroyed by John Dee using Excalibur. They go to see the Witch of Endor. She gives Sophie all of her memories in addition to the ability to use air magic, and they are kind of on the run after that. And one other kind of important thing to note is in the first book, because it does play out in the second book, is that John Dee is painted as the villain, and he does kind of get a one-on-one with Josh at one point, whose powers have not been awakened yet because they ran out of time. So that's kind of where the first book ends, and where we will dive into book 2. So we have our main cast of characters: Nicholas Flamel, Josh, Sophie, and Skithach. I think that's how you say it. I swear I like look it up and practice and I can never say it right. She goes by Scatty, so we're gonna call her Scatty. They are all in Paris at this point. Perry, Nicholas Flamel's wife, has been locked in Alcatraz, and she is being guarded by a sphinx who feeds off of magical power. So she's not only locked behind bars, but she's guarded by this thing that is just eating her magical abilities, so she really can't escape. So of course, as I said, there's always like more legendary people introduced. We are introduced to Niccolo Machiavelli, who is working with John Dee to kind of stop Nicholas Flamel and his group of misfits on their journey to train the twins, awaken their power, and just make sure that the Dark Elders do not return. His driver is Dagon. Honestly, there are some characters that I do have to look up. Like I don't know all of them, or maybe I've heard of them, but I just don't know a lot of details about them. Dagon is one that I actually only know because of a board game called Unfathomable, which is a very difficult, co-op game where one person is a trader and you are all collectively working to kind of steer a boat and move it to safety while being attacked by Mother Hydra and Dagon and all of their little sea creatures. So that's truthfully the only thing that I know him from, but he is kind of a friend slash employee of Machiavelli. And then we are also introduced to Francis Saint Germain, who is an ally of Nicholas Flamel living in Paris. And so he is helping them on this, first of all, find safety from John Dee, but also kind of train Sophie in the use of fire magic and help them figure out kind of what their next steps will be. Because at this point, they're in Paris without any identification, without any valid passports. And so they don't have a lot of options. One other character that I forgot to mention, Saint Germain's wife is Joan of Arc, who was also best friends with Scatty, so there's a big reunion for them. One of the things that is just kind of a constant theme throughout this book is Josh really questioning who is the good guy and who's the bad guy. And I gotta say, John Dee really got in his head in the first book and asked him a bunch of questions like, well, how do you really know that Flamel's a good guy? You know, how do you really know that he has your best interest in mind? How do you really know that, like, he has good intentions for you and your sister? Because, you know, the whole awakening process is extremely dangerous. So it's possible Sophie could have died. And at that point, Josh is like, okay, well, I didn't know that my sister was in danger of actually dying. That changes things. But I gotta say, Flamel does not do a lot to convince Josh otherwise. And so I almost feel like if I were Josh in this situation, I would have continued to question as well. And I feel like he's justified in doing so, because there are a couple of times where he vocalizes it and Flamel is just kind of like, yeah, that's a good question. Like, how do you truly know? Like, it's very philosophical about it. Like, how do you really know if somebody's good? The answers that he gives are also just like very short. It's everybody else that is arguing for his character that makes a difference. He does very little to argue for himself. So a couple of kind of key things throughout this time that they spent at the Saint Germain house. First of all, Josh is given the remaining 2 pages of the Codex, the Book of Abraham, to guard. John Dee has the rest, so it's imperative that they are not united because Josh has the important pages that will bring the Dark Elders back. So he needs to guard those and not get those into the wrong hands. Secondly, Nicholas Flamel gives him one of the 4 swords of power. So there are 4 swords of power, as I literally just said. I don't know why I'm repeating myself, but one of which was Excalibur that we saw in book 1, destroying the world tree that Hecate lived in. Sword number 2 is Clarent, which is kind of the opposite or the brother of Excalibur, and that is the one that Josh has. Everyone's super nervous about it whenever he's holding it, but he gets some very light sword training from Joan of Arc and Scatty, and by light I mean they basically just show him how to hold it because he has no, like, he's got to start somewhere and he can't even pick it up, so that's a good place to start for him. As I already mentioned, Saint Germain trains Sophie to use fire magic, and he kind of gives her this little gold tattoo on her wrist that she can use as I think he calls it a trigger to help her focus her aura and use the magic in a way that's not going to cause her to blow up. While they think that they are safe in the home of Francis Saint Germain and Joan of Arc, they're actually being monitored by Machiavelli, and John Dee, who are now working together at this point. And their plan is to, first of all, get rid of Scatty because she's this ancient, super revered warrior. They know that it's going to be a problem if they have to face her. So their first kind of goal is to get her out of the way. So let's get rid of her. That'll make it easier for us to get to the twins, get to Flamel, and then we can do so. So they call the Desir, aka the Valkyries. So there are 3 Valkyries who arrive, and their plan is to release the Nidhogg, who, I think I'm saying that right, is this giant serpentine, it's compared to a dinosaur quite a bit. I imagined it as like a giant salamander, but I think it's described more as like a large Komodo dragon. It was restrained by the roots of the world tree, and so when it was destroyed, the Nidhogg was released. And so the Disir are like, you know, nobody can really control it. Like the last time it was out, it was problematic, but that's fine. It will get rid of Scatty, and then we'll take it from here. When it sleeps, then we'll capture it and we'll figure out what to do with it. So not the not a whole lot of confidence going into this plan here, in my opinion, but they are able to break into the Saint Germain house using the Nidhogg. It captures Scatty, starts running away. There's fighting with the Valkyries between Sophie and Joan of Arc. Sophie ends up like wrapping them, two of them, in fog and freezing them, and then they just throw them in the deep freeze for a little bit, which I thought was an awesome way to defeat somebody. And then Josh runs after the Nidhogg using Clarent, and he discovers when he stabs it with the sword that it kind of like the inside of it turns to lava, and then it hardens into like a volcanic rock on the outside. So he stabs a part of its tail, but it's enough of it is like turning to solid rock that it's slowing it down. So Josh is now trying to figure out how to stop this giant monster from getting into the water, where from there, like, who knows what would happen and how they would get Scatty back. There's one Valkyrie left that's still trying to kill Scatty while she's kind of unconscious, clutched in the Nidhogg's claws, and Josh is barely able to hold up the sword trying to fight them both off. So in an interesting turn of events, John Dee is the one who actually saves him from the Valkyrie, and then he, Josh, and Machiavelli end up fleeing the scene. Sophie comes in, finishes the job, because that's kind of what she does. She's pretty awesome. Scatty is okay, they rescue her, and then the second she's free, Dagon is like, I've got a beef with you, it ends now, and he just drags her into the river. So unfortunately for the rest of the book, we don't see her, but we know she's a vampire and she doesn't need to breathe. That is made very clear, so she's probably fine. I feel like for such a major character who has been a key player in 2 books so far, it's a very undignified death if this is how she goes, and I will have major issues with it if this is the end of her, so I'm fairly confident she's fine. So John Dee gives Josh a choice. He's like, listen, you can go back, you can work with Flamel, who you don't trust, you can be with your sister, or we can take you right now to have your powers awakened, and then you'll be just like her. Because on top of just questioning everything, Josh has been dealing with a lot of jealousy. Like, he's really upset that he and his twin are not on even footing anymore, with Sophie's powers being awakened, being trained in now 2 magical elements, and he's still just a regular human. So he is continuing to get jealous. So he says, fine, you can train me, and in his like inner monologue he thinks, okay, I'll just get awakened, I'll ditch these guys, and I'll find my sister. This to the end of the book was probably my favorite part. I think it was probably as creepy as you could get in a book that is intended for a younger audience. I don't want to say it's intended for children because it's quite complex, it's quite large. So I do think it's middle grade YA, like right in that sweet spot in between them. They take him to the Paris catacombs. I was not familiar with the Paris catacombs until I read this book. There's a little author's note at the end kind of explaining the more of the true history of them, and I would say a lot of what was in the book matched up with the true history. I did a little research afterwards, but quick history lesson, basically there were these quarries that were dug, the cemeteries were overflowing, there was a lot of plague in Paris's past, and so they just started piling bodies in these quarries underground, and so now it's just this huge catacomb with, I think the estimate that I read was about 7 million people have been buried down there, and that's, I think, just a rough estimate. In addition to that, somebody's been down there doing this really awesome bone art with all of these skeletons. I've never been to Paris, but that is definitely jumped up on my list of things that I want to do when I do eventually go to Paris, and so I will definitely be visiting the catacombs. But if you have been, like I would like to know more about it. So let me know in the comments what that experience was like. And if you're not familiar with them, I highly recommend you look them up because they just look so cool. Anyway, so there, Josh, Dee, and Machiavelli are just kind of running through the sewers in Paris, which are also apparently like streets with their own street signs. They're running into the catacombs. They are looking for the elder the oldest elder. There's something special about this guy. I can't remember what the deal is with him. It's Mars, like the god of war, Mars, Ares, different names that he's gone by. This whole scene just kind of gave me Elden Ring vibes. Like if this were a boss in Elden Ring, I would not be surprised at all. So Phonos and Dymas are there, like the little satyrs or fawns, whatever they are. And they're described as having like bulbous heads, huge eyes that don't blink, really long like white hair, the size of children. And they're written as such creepy little guys. I love them so much. And they feed off of fear and panic. So the second Josh started panicking, they like scampered up to him and was like feeding off of his panic and fear, and it was gross in every lovable way. So Mars is like this giant stone statue guy because he was cursed and his aura turns completely to stone. There's a really like savage moment coming up. But anyway, he agrees to awaken Josh's power and says, "You will owe me a debt. I don't do this for free." Awakens his power, and then also says he's going to give him a free gift, which truthfully we do not find out what that is in the second book. So that's going to be something revealed in book 3. As he is like finishing his awakening process, Sophie and the rest of the gang finally arrive. They rescue Josh. There's this awesome moment where Nicholas Flamel uses transmutation to turn these like walls that have been carved out of bone into like a liquid material, so Mars gets kind of stuck in them. And then Dee gets mad at Mars for they're arguing about something, and then he hardens it. So he's now trapped in this like covered in bone is like a statue. But the savage moment that I mentioned, the Witch of Endor and he have like a long history together, and Sophie has all of those memories. So she kind of confronts him and says like, I know about all this. I know about X, Y, and Z. I don't understand why you changed, because you used to be on the side of humanity and now you're against them. And I know you were cursed. And he's like, well, can you remove the curse? And she says, I can, but I won't. It's like, you go, girl. That's amazing. So wrapping it up, they escape. Josh's powers are awakened. They are on their way to find somebody else who can train them in water magic, and that's going to be Gilgamesh. That's all that's said about it. It's just Gilgamesh is coming. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Let's throw it back to Perry real quickly in Alcatraz, because I kind of skimmed over a lot of what was going on with her. But by the end of the book, she uses the ghosts of Alcatraz to help her figure out a way to escape, distract the Sphinx. She finds out that John Dee has something deep and dark and ancient hidden like way, way, way down in Alcatraz. And when she goes down there, it's one of the spider elders who is on the side of humanity. So he's basically trying to imprison anyone who's on the wrong side to kind of make the odds better in their favor. The Morrigan has also been sent to just kill Perry. They're like done with the Flamels. They want them dead. She knows that Perry's like deep in Alcatraz. Basically, it's just waiting for her to come out. Perry and the spider elder decide, let's work together, surprise her, they trap her in webs. The last kind of exchange that we have between Perry and the Morrigan is that she threatens to imprison her down deep in Alcatraz, away from the sun, away from the sky, where she can't fly, in the same structure that was used for the spider elder. And so that's kind of where things are left off. Not sure if she's following through with that or not. But as far as a summary goes, that is the end of book 2. Let's talk about this story a little more. So my first criticism for this series is the length of the books. This book was like 460 pages, which as an adult is not a lot to read. Again, if the audience is younger, I feel like this is really big. And I know we're in a different time now where our attention span has shortened because of TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and all of those things. But I still feel like if the goal is to get kids to want to read, a 400-page story probably isn't the way to do it. There was a lot of dialogue that didn't need to be there. And the purpose of it was to, I think, over-explain things to the reader. And again, it's meant for a younger audience. I'm sure that was just to make sure that they had a full grasp of the story. But I swear there were full conversations, and it happened multiple times, where Josh or Sophie would be like, what is that? Why do you have it? Where did it come from? When did you get it? How did you get it? How does it they'd go through like all of the W questions, and it happened multiple times. I do think that this could have been edited down quite a bit. There was a lot of nonsense to kind of get through, but the good parts were so good. Like I said, the whole scene at the catacombs at the end, I was on edge the whole time. I loved it. The fight with the Nidhogg was a little more broken up because there were different people coming into the scene at different times, seeing different parts of it. And so it was a little bit more difficult to follow the action because it was happening in smaller chunks with like dialogue and running in between, but that was really engaging as well. It's just all of the stuff in between that was, it got a little bit long, and it was like I really had to kind of work to get through. I looked at it as a job to like read this book, so I was fine with it, but I don't know if reading for pleasure, if this would be one that I was like, oh, let me just pick that up because it's so fun to read these 15-year-old kids ask every W question about everything. Josh and Sophie are like the main characters of the story. I feel like if I were to relate to a main character, it would be Josh more so than Sophie. He's much more the skeptic, as I've mentioned. He's questioning everything throughout the entire book. And I think that I definitely am more on his side of things. Sophie is very accepting, and to be fair, she has all of the memories of this like 100,000-year life of the Witch of Endor. So in terms of knowing what's going on, she obviously knows more than we do as the reader. But I think Josh is the more realistic and relatable character because he's the one, I know I complained about asking the questions, but he's the one asking the questions and saying like, how do we truly know that we're on the right side here? Because like you guys, like Nicholas Flamel could be bad, we have no way of knowing, and again does nothing to discredit those questions, does nothing to prove that he's a good guy, just kind of says, oh well, you know, like that's what you think, Josh, that's okay. And everyone else was like, trust me, I've known him a long time, he's a great guy. Not a lot of confidence in Nicholas Flamel, honestly. I also feel like he's not a super likable character, which is kind of annoying because he should be. I don't know, maybe he shouldn't be though, because maybe he's supposed to be more like middle of the road, you can't figure him out. But I don't know, like honestly, I liked Machiavelli and John Dee more than I liked Nicholas Flamel. Like if there were a character that I would want to get rid of, it would probably be him. I felt like in this book in particular, he was pretty much just worn out the whole time. Like he was exhausted from using his magic. I felt like he contributed next to nothing. So I mean, like if he had died, it would have been fine, but I didn't say that. Let's kind of talk through what I think is going to happen in book 3. And I do have to say, another great thing about this series is that because there are so many random legendary characters thrown in, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen next. At the end, when Flamel says, okay, I want you guys to be trained in water magic, I'm going to take you to, I think he says the oldest living immortal on Earth or something like that. there's no way that I would have been like, oh, I bet it's Gilgamesh of all people. So that makes it difficult to kind of predict what's going to happen next. One thing that I am not sure of moving forward, I do feel like Josh and Sophie are going to separate. I don't think it can happen yet though, because Josh has the last 2 pages of the codex, and I think it would be too easy if the bad guys got those in book 3. So I think there's going to be something that happens where he passes the pages back to Nicholas Flamel, and then probably leaves of his own volition, I would think, to go train with John Dee and Machiavelli. He's kind of... Okay, so he reminds me of like Bakugo in My Hero Academia, how early on he's written as the villain, and I was waiting for his big Sasuke moment where he was just gonna like leave and be like, I'm gonna go find my own path and revenge and blah blah blah, and ended up not, just ended up being like the grouchy friend in the entire, like never really became bad at all, even though I was expecting that. And so that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from Josh. Like it seems like he's going that like moody Sasuke route where he needs to like leave and carve his own path or whatever, but he also is tied to his sister and wants to believe that she knows what she's talking about and also wants to protect her. And so I truly cannot figure out if he is going to leave or not, but I'm leaning more toward I think he is. There are 4 more books in this series, so obviously there's a lot that's going to happen. I have no idea at this juncture how the series is going to end. I'm assuming that good wins, but what that looks like, I don't know. So we'll just have to figure it out together. So question at the end then, did I miss out by not reading book 2? Because I did miss out by not reading book 1. And I would say, yes, I did. Now, I can totally picture myself as a younger me picking up book 1, really enjoying it, forgetting the series existed, and a couple of years later coming back and finishing it. And actually that's kind of what I did as an adult. I didn't forget it existed. I kept looking at it and thinking I should read that, but life happens. So I think that it would be a series that I would really enjoy. I don't know how memorable it would be though. It might be one of those things that I was like, this is my genre, this is what I enjoy reading. I like all of the references to these different characters. I like the history, like the catacombs. It's a one and done. So yes, I missed out by not reading it, but is it going to leave a lasting impression? I don't know. So I am going to continue with the rest of this series. I think, again, because of where this falls in the season, I think I'm going to take a break, do some spooky reading. We're going to revisit a few books that I read as a preteen/teen that were on the scarier side for me, and my bar is so low, you guys. So don't worry, it's nothing even remotely touching horror. And then also looking at some books that I didn't read as a preteen/teen that are more in that spooky realm and deciding if I missed out on those. And then once the spooky season is over, we'll come back to this series and move on to some other ones. So that is it for book 2 of The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I had a lot of fun revisiting this. I have a lot of fun chatting with all of you who read this series and are sharing your thoughts, things that you enjoyed, filling me in on some of the legends and the folklore that I maybe missed out on. So keep them coming. Let's chat about it, and we will revisit this series soon. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.